Critics blame a shift toward renewable energy sources.
Over the years, Texas has diversified its energy production, investing more heavily in solar and wind. Environmental groups like the Sierra Club have also celebrated as Texas has shut down some coal-fired plants. But now some, including the Wall Street Journal, argue Texas has gambled too much on renewable energy. The paper writes power shortages show the folly of eliminating natural gas and coal. Democrats insist there's no one single energy sector to blame for the blackouts and that a more thorough investigation is needed.
Fox's Mark Meredith, Governor Greg Abbott telling Fox's Hannity.
It is essential that we as a country remain where we continue to provide access to fossil fuels for heating, for taking care of our homes, for industrial purposes, for cities to be able to run.
The governor has ordered an investigation into the agency that manages the Texas power grid. Several people have been killed in the state trying to stay warm, including a mother and daughter in the Houston area who started their car in the garage for heat and then were overcome by carbon monoxide. Big changes are likely coming to the Chicago Tribune, the New York Daily News, and the Baltimore Sun. Tribune Publishing selling to Alden Capital, a hedge fund known for cutting costs and newsroom jobs. The deal expected to close before the end of June. Wall Street Tuesday adding 64 points. The Dow reached a new record high, but NASDAQ dropped 47 and the S&P 500 closed 2 points lower. America is listening to Fox News.
The vaccine is officially here, and we aren't just talking about the COVID vaccine, but a financial vaccine at Bank Pacific. We may not be doctors, but we can help you with your financial health. Whether to take advantage of today's crazy low rates, or just a local bank that has your back. At Bank Pacific, we want to help make 2021 your best year yet. Because for 66 years, where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Half a day. This is Alicia Blas from Security Title, reminding you that your 2020 property taxes are now due and payable. You may not know that you can pay your taxes online at pay.guam.gov. All you have to do is follow these simple steps. Register, log in, get a PIN, and pay. If you purchased a property after March 2nd, 2020, you will likely not receive a tax bill in your name, but you will still owe the tax. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
President Biden holding a town hall meeting in Milwaukee Tuesday, televised on CNN.
For 4 years, all that's been in the news is Trump. The next 4 years, I want to make sure all the news is the American people.
But the president said he supports amnesty for 11 million immigrants in the U.S. illegally. He said there will be enough coronavirus vaccine for everybody who wants it by July, but said he's not sure the country will be back to normal by year's end. CNN's moderator did not ask about the nursing home death stats scandal enveloping New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo, nor the abrupt resignation over the weekend of a deputy White House press secretary after he'd reportedly threatened a female reporter. Former President Trump in a written statement excoriating Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, blaming McConnell for the GOP's Senate losses in Georgia and for not offering big enough stimulus checks. Mr. Trump saying Senate Democrat leader Schumer plays McConnell like a fiddle and predicted the GOP would never again be respected or strong with McConnell at its helm. No response from Senator McConnell so far, who blamed the former president for the riot last month at the U.S. Capitol. Most of the National Guardsmen now patrolling the nation's capital should be coming home in another few weeks. Pentagon spokesman John Kirby telling Fox's Your World with Neil Cavuto.
There was some internal discussions about, well, what if we needed to keep them longer? What would that look like? That's what we're expected to do. We're expected to be ready to answer those kinds of questions. But right now, Neil, the plan is mid-March to end this mission.
Kirby said the Pentagon will cooperate in a pending investigation of the riot and why the Capitol wasn't better prepared. McDonald's denying allegations made in a discrimination lawsuit filed against it in Ohio. Herbert Washington owns 14 franchises, but says the company has shown more favorable treatment to white owners and has denied him the opportunity to buy restaurants in more affluent communities. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
76 Circle K, the Subaki Tower, and Spa Ayalam bring you another staycation. We are celebrating Mom and all she does. Win a 2-night stay at the luxurious Subaki Tower, get pampered by Spa Ayalam, and enjoy a delicious lunch and dinner at Casa Oceano. All you have to do is purchase $35 or more in 76 fuel and enter to win a staycation fit for a mom. The more you gas, the more chances of winning. Visit 76circlekguam.com or any Circle K location for more information. Chili's is bringing you a full meal offer with 3 for Me for just $15. You get a beverage, a starter, and an entree. First, choose from a refreshing Coca-Cola or iced tea, pick a starter, then select your choice of a mouth-watering entree, like Cajun pasta with grilled chicken, ranchero chicken tacos, or the savory Santa Fe burger. Dine in today or visit chilisguam.com for delivery and to-go options. Chili's, 3 for Me for just $15. Available for a limited time. Chili's, savor the moment.
Listen to The Point. Any speaker, anytime. Check us out on your FM radio at 93.3, 104.3 HD3, thepoint.gu, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and tune in. And announcing radio.com. Download the app and hear The Point. Get the latest news, sports, entertainment, and more.
On demand.
Your phone is digital. Your life is digital. And we are too. 93.3, The Point.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions. Featuring the latest special at Mezcla, Manupua, baked barbecue pork buns, Chinese-style barbecue pork in buttery pastry, $30 for a dozen. Call 479-2652 or 2653 to place your order.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The right of the people to listen to and enjoy tall tales shall not be infringed. Right, Jose?
Right on, Bob.
The only thing that stops us are two phenomena that occur almost 4 or 5 times a month called the weekend.
Darn that weekend.
Yeah, that's the only thing that holds us back. Okay, starting out with Jemmy Ikotny. And we have a special today to USA Today from Paul Brandis, the founder and White House bureau chief of West Wing Reports, who is a member of the USA Today Board of Contributors. I wonder if that tells you anything about his viewpoint.
That he's board of contributors?
Yeah, more than likely a middle-of-the-road, really objective kind of guy, right? Never puts himself into the editorial. Yeah. And here's the title of today's editorial: Impeachment Over, Let's Move Forward Without Trump. America always does best when it looks to the future, not the past. Wrong. Absolutely. You start out, you can't even get through the first sentence without doing your leftist propaganda. And this is the way it should always be. After all, yesterday is not ours to recover, said Lyndon Johnson, but tomorrow's is ours to win or lose. Only a few weeks into the new year, we're getting some glimpses of our tomorrow. We sure are. And they are encouraging signs. Here's a few that stand out. Tesla is the hot name in electric cars, yet in terms of revenue, it's dwarfed by the likes of General Motors. So it's huge news that GM says its plans to phase out gasoline-powered cars by 2035. Just 14 years from now. That's really good news, yeah. I expect the folks down in Texas are really excited about that news. Yeah. As other automakers hit their gas on their own electric vehicles, and pardon the soon-to-be outdated pun. Get ready for a wave of technological innovation, competition, and entrepreneurial achievement. Any form of economic disruption means job losses in some industries. You know, like canceling the XL pipeline, some job losses in some industries, but, you know, they could learn to code or build solar panels. This sort of creative destruction, as economist Joseph Schumpeter put it, remember when I was talking about Joseph Schumpeter?
Oh, yeah.
Just a couple days ago, right? Put it, is what keeps the always evolving American economy moving ahead. And I have to agree with that. The National Rifle Association has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. I don't see, and that's all one sentence, creative destruction. NRA has applied for Chapter 11 protection. I support the Second Amendment and the right to own guns, but the NRA is run by out-of-touch extremists. The worst possible thing you can call some, you know, pretty soon, you know, in about 10 more years, we're going to have to insist that people not refer to us as extremists. We'll have to require them to say the X word.
Can't even use extremists anymore.
Yeah. Well, we can't. You know,
Well,
we will, you know, turnabout is fair play. Yeah. So, you know, if you're going to talk about us, you better say the X word. Don't you start talking about, I'm not even going to say it on the air. It's the X word, right? The NRA is run by out-of-touch extremists who dismiss school shootings and think it's okay for anyone to own military-style assault weapons. Yeah, we just dismiss school shootings. Oops. They speak neither for me nor for tens of millions of Americans who want some common sense. Just to give one example, even 92% of Republicans and Republican leaners either strongly or somewhat favor barring people with mental illness from purchasing guns. Yeah. These people don't understand. These people who are saying that crazy people can't own guns just don't understand the Second Amendment. Talk about the X word. Whoa. If you ever wondered what the straw man fallacy looks like, folks, out there in our international radio listening audience, let me read that sentence again. Even 92% of Republicans and Republican leaners either strongly or somewhat favor barring people with mental illnesses from purchasing guns. Yet then President Donald Trump, with the NRA's encouragement, made it easier for such people to get weapons by rolling back an Obama-era regulation of 2017, which we're not, you know, we don't need to know what it was. Well, the NRA bankruptcy is probably just a disingenuous attempt to invade an investigation by New York's Attorney General. I'm delighted to see it squirming and on the defensive.
Kind of like Cuomo.
Yeah.
Speaking of New York.
Yeah, the Cuomo, you know, I keep talking about comedy duos like Abbott and Costello and Sabina and Tello, et cetera. Well, we've got the Cuomos in New York.
The Cuomo brothers.
The Cuomo brothers, yeah. Right up there with the Marx brothers. The Italian equivalent of the Marx brothers.
When they kill, they kill.
Yeah. The Republican Party, meanwhile, is cracking up. This is the good news. Yeah. Let's see. Only a few weeks into this new year, we're getting some glimpses of our tomorrow, and there are encouraging signs. The Republican Party, meanwhile, is cracking up. That's a good sign, right? And I got to stop here and express my own particular view. I'm a Republican. I've been a Republican for a long time. I'm probably going to be a Republican for a long time. I'm not a Democrat. I don't want to be a Democrat. But before we came along with the woke Democrat Party, I recognized not only the existence of the Democrat Party, but the necessity of the Democrat Party. That a one-party system is not a good system, and you need the tension of disagreement caused by different political philosophies, etc. I never wanted to see the Democrat Party disappear. I wanted the Republican Party to win elections, that's all. That's not how Democrats think. They don't want to just win elections. They want to get rid of the Democrat Party forever. Going back to this editorial, the Republican Party, meanwhile, is cracking up. I voted for Republican presidents in the past. My first vote was for Ronald Reagan, for example. But that GOP of immigration, free trade, the rule of law, and standing up to the Russians hasn't existed for a long time. Scores of Republican lawmakers downplayed the deadly Trump-inspired attempt to overthrow a free and fair election. There we go. The big lie. The Democrats have to tell the big lie. Free and fair election in the January 6th Capitol attack. And 43 of them voted Saturday to acquit him of inciting the attack. Now, that's not what he was charged with. He was not charged with inciting the attack here, Mr. What was this guy's name? Mr. Brandis. He was not charged. He was charged with inciting an insurrection. Somewhat different. Since the shocking violence at the Capitol, Republicans have literally given a standing ovation for Georgia's loony, unstable Marjorie Taylor Greene, who gives a tremendous amount of competition to New York's AOC. In fact, she's loonier than AOC. Yeah. A white supremacist who has previously endorsed racist filth and the execution of Democrat lawmakers. At the same time, many in the GOP have turned on Wyoming Representative Liz Cheney, whose middle initials are BA. You know what the BA stands for?
No.
Benedict Arnold.
I thought you were going to say BS.
Well, that too, yeah. Who had the temerity to blame Trump for the Capitol attack and vote to impeach him. She has been censured for this by cowardly Republicans in her home state, as has been Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, with a censure vote scheduled Monday night for Senator Richard Burr, whose middle name is, guess what?
Raymond.
Aaron.
Got it.
Yeah. Senator Aaron Burr of North Carolina. Both senators voted Saturday to convict Trump.
Didn't he lose the duel?
Aaron Burr?
Yeah.
No, he killed Hamilton.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He was in that one.
Yeah. The Republican Party is eating itself alive with its fanatical devotion to a twice-impeached con man. It has lost the popular vote in 7 of the past 8 presidential elections and remains clueless as to why. As a matter of fact, I think Republicans completely understand why they don't win the popular vote, and they don't even try, so long as California is as big as it is and as blue as it is. Why bother? Hillary Clinton, read this. And whatever you do, Hillary Clinton, never go to Wisconsin. You know, that Wisconsin's done some really great things, but that was one of the greatest, not having Hillary go there. A Sunday scan of home pages of numerous news sites on February 7, the Sunday before the Senate impeachment trial launched, revealed few mentions of the 45th president. WAPO had one, a piece on how Trump's election lies have cost taxpayers more than $500 million and counting. The New York Times had a few, largely dealing with many messes left behind by Trump. And Fox News had two, both concerning his second impeachment trial. What's wrong with Fox News? They weren't bashing Trump before the beginning of that trial. Newsmax emerging as a favorite of the MAGA crowd, and I've been watching Newsmax myself a little bit. Have you tried it?
I have the app.
Yeah. Had just one mention, as did One American News Network, said to be one of Trump's favorite, quote, news channels.
OAN.
Yeah.
I have that app also.
Republicans think their future lies in Trumpism? Good luck with that. No president has ever been so utterly deserving of humiliation and contempt. Except Bill Clinton. Wasn't Bill Clinton impeached?
Yes, he was.
Yeah. Now, what did they impeach Bill Clinton for? Refresh my recollection here.
For lying under oath.
What was he lying about?
Something that he did not have with that woman.
That woman, Monica
That
Lewinsky?
woman.
Yeah. In the closet in the Oval Office, as a matter of fact.
Right.
Yeah. But that was then, this is now. That was him, this is Trump, right? Republicans think their future, as he were, though Trump won a second acquittal at his second impeachment trial, his followers will sulk and play the victim like they always. Oh, wow.
He's right about one thing. We are cracking up.
Yeah, Republicans have always been playing the victim. The rest of the country is already looking to a more prosperous and civilized future, one in which the name Trump will hopefully be heard less and less, and then not at all. Yeah, really good, Daily News. You sure know how to pick them.
I think this is therapy for the TDS, the weekend groups.
Yeah, really. Yeah, if you want to come to grips with your Trump derangement syndrome, read these editorials in the Daily News every day, and you'll get over it quick. Okay, then we go from there to the Post. And the thing about the Post is that what the Post is basically saying is that the lack of outrage is outrageous. Or maybe it's out Martinez, out Pangolin, out Cruz. I think it's outrageous, although I know my friends from Agan are going to take issue with that. The crash involving a driver who supposedly blacked out and struck Mayor Melissa Savares and 4 other government of Guam employees while on the sidewalk doing their jobs could have been a bigger tragedy if it had happened more than an hour later. The February 11 crash occurred around 2 p.m. and involved a driver who told police he had taken methamphetamine for the first time the night before. How dumb can anybody possibly be? You know? Yeah, I never tried it before, but when my friend brought some rat poison home and said I could try it, I wanted to give it a shot. A crash occurred around 2 p.m. and involved a driver who told police he had taken methamphetamine for the first time the night before and had been drinking beer the morning of the crash, according to the prosecution in the criminal case against the defendant. Samuel Jr. Duenas Griffin, 34, was charged with 5 counts of vehicular negligence as a third-degree felony, driving while impaired as a misdemeanor, possession of an open container and a motor vehicle as a misdemeanor, and bad breath. I guess Tony's busy with the phone. Jose's busy with the phone. He allegedly told police, "I'll man up to my mistakes and try to make it right." The crash happened right outside Benavente Middle School campus, where school children were in classrooms. The school day ended around 3:30 p.m. Had the crash occurred an hour and a half later, students who live within a mile from the school would have been walking on the same road. The GovGuam personnel had just finished assessing the trees outside the campus for the safety of students who walk to and from school when they heard the sound of a vehicle heading their way. We are thankful there was no fatality and no children or students were out on the sidewalk, Melissa Savara said. It's horrifying to think what could have happened if the middle school students were walking in the area just as a car was barreling down the sidewalk. The suspect's admission of alleged meth and alcohol use and feeling chest pains before losing consciousness while behind the wheel draws attention to the problem that innocent lives are at risk nearly every day when people drive under the influence of illegal drugs, alcohol, or both. Another recent unrelated case filed in the Superior Court alleges that on February 15th, an adult, Stephen Roland Tadeo Miranda, drove while impaired by methamphetamine. The car Miranda was driving slammed into the rear of a family van on Marine Corps Drive in Tamuning, causing substantial damage to the van. Both of these cases are still in a preliminary phase, and two defendants are presumed innocent in court unless they're found guilty, but basic details are not in dispute. Drivers who were under the alleged influence of drugs lost control of their vehicles and ended up hurting innocent lives and causing property damage. The sobering part about the crash outside Benevente was the lack of outrage, particularly from most elected officials. I was expecting a letter to the editor from Angel Sablon. You know how he is on methamphetamine, right? Of course, he may, this guy, Griffin may have been like a brother to Angel Sablon, so that would have made it okay.
He was getting food for his family.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the lack of outrage. It seems as though the occurrence of murders and crashes related to meth has become all too familiar to many. If that is the case, our drug problem will persist because it's being accepted as part of living on Guam. How many times have I beaten on that one? That as long as we have the Angel Sablon attitude prevalent in our community, it's not going to change. Oh, yeah, this is really a bad thing and it's really dangerous. And these people who are involved in the drug trade are really bad people, unless they're like a brother to me, said Angel Sablon. So until the Angel Sablons of our island are pilloried and canceled, much as I don't like the cancel culture, if anyone needed to be canceled, it's Angel Sablon. Unless we change our attitudes about all of these things, it's going to be the way it is. And the Daily News or the Post hit it right on the head. Our drug, it seems as though the occurrence of murders and crashes related to meth use has become all too familiar to many. If that's the case, our drug problem will persist because it's being accepted as part of living on Guam, and law enforcement will not get the help they need. Of course, you'll see when I get to the card that our chief of police, rather than combat drug trafficking, is nursing his learned helplessness. Jose, I noticed we had a caller. I guess he got impatient.
He just wanted to send something through the WhatsApp, but I'll talk about it with you.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, let's take a short break.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Hey, big news! news. Now you can listen to The Point on radio.com. And radio.com gives you so much more. Local news stations give you what's going on in your community. Get national news from CBS, CNN, or Fox News Radio. Take a break with one of the hundreds of music, sports, and talk stations. Love podcasts? Radio.com has thousands of true crime, comedy, kids and family podcasts, and more. Listen anytime, anywhere, on your PC, smart speakers, and a variety of connected devices. Or download the Radio.com app now from the App Store or Google Play.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So all you folks out there in our international radio listening audience, brother and sister tailgaters, once I start an item on the card, I like to finish it up before I entertain callers, and I hope, I usually hope that the caller is calling about that item on the card. However, things are not so rigid on Tall Tales that we can't entertain all callers at one time or another, with one notable exception. I'm very reluctant to talk about compact impact with one of our callers. Other than that, pretty much anything goes. But if you call and I'm in the middle of an item on the card, I probably won't get to you until I finish that item on the card. Okay, talking about the card, I've got my program notes here. BJ has provided the next chapter of the Port 7 saga. Rory added another chapter today. The legislature entertains a partisan battle, the Republicans against Democrats, just on that basis. Tom Shea is recognized as an ally of the anti-aborts. Chief Ignacio demonstrates learned helplessness. Oregon demonstrates a reality deficiency. What else is new for Oregon, right? And then I've got some stuff that's been on the card for quite some time that if Rory would quit being so newsworthy, I could probably progress down the card, but Rory never disappoints.
It's just a coincidence, but the capital of Oregon is Portland.
Actually, it's Salem.
Salem?
Salem.
I just want to make the connection with Portland.
Oh, for
we were
Rory,
talking
about reality, huh?
Hmm.
Yeah, well, there's also a pretty good Salem. Depends on which city you're talking about, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start out with Republicans. We'll give Rory a break for a minute. Start out talking about Republicans versus Democrats. Republican senators propose rule changes. A Republican-led legislative resolution to change some of the standing rules and allow for the Republicans to hire a lawyer was added to the session Tuesday after 6 of 7 Republicans voted to place it in the second reading file. Now, I don't know how you could get something to the second reading file with only 6 votes, but that's the Daily News for you. Republican Senators Moylan, Atta, Teitigui, Blas, Brown, and Duenas, along with Democrat Sabina Paris, voted to put Resolution 19 on the session agenda. In the 36th Guam legislature, Democrats have a majority with 8 senators coming from the Democrats parties and Republicans 7. Resolution 19 seeks to amend the standing rules to allow the minority leader, Jim Moylan, to hire a local attorney to be minority counsel. Yeah. I don't understand how these guys could wait this long in the minority. If you are in the minority, you got to have counsel. You know, it's like going into battle with no rifles. To be, to think that you could go up against the Democrats without your own lawyer. The rule changes proposed including providing a public hearing for a bill introduced by a member or committee no more than 120 days after the bill is introduced. The resolution proposed the Committee on Rules chaired by Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munya Barnes refer bills to the principal committee within 2 working days after the measure is introduced. The resolution also proposes that error-free committee reports are posted online 2 days after they are filed. The resolution also proposed adding 5 instead of 2 minority members to each standing committee and changing the rules so the legislature would hire an executive director by a majority vote. The rules currently state the executive director is to be hired by the chairperson of the Committee on Rules. Mm-hmm.
Figures.
Yeah. So I have the bill here, and you have to kind of read between the lines here to see what's going on. And the bill is sponsored by Moylan, Ada, Blas, Brown, Duenas, and Teitigui, 6 of the 7 Republicans in the legislature, causing anybody who thinks about these things to say, whatever happened to Mary Torres? And you'll recall back at the end of the 35th, when Tello Teitigui was the minority leader, they put out a press release that very prominently left Mary Torres's name out of the release and talked in terms of the Republican minority. So the import or the purport of that article was that Mary Torres was not a member of the Republican minority.
Have you seen this? Did you see the session? This is the first session they've had, right?
I didn't see it.
It's very interesting. Just like realty, location. I don't think Mary Torres is in the same place she was in the 35th as far as the seating arrangement goes. That's interesting as well.
The seating arrangement.
I think the 6 of them, there's 6 of them on one side.
Yeah.
And then Mary Torres is somewhere else.
Is she back in the corner with her back to the rest of the room?
Close.
So are you saying that the physical alignment places her with the majority instead of with the minority?
I think so. I have to look at it again because I remember she was in the way back, but the person in the way back did not look like her.
Yeah, well, the legislature, in the interest of transparency, ought to publish their seating chart every day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the first thing that jumps out and grabs me by the eyeballs, because this is a partisan resolution. This is not about a public issue or anything. This is Republican versus Democrat, and it's 6 Republicans, not 7 Republicans. So I think that's kind of interesting. And then there's an amendment to the standing rules that says, at the request of the minority leader, the legislature shall hire a Guam licensed attorney selected by the minority to serve as minority counsel. So again, unless you read this really carefully, you might miss the import of this. There's nothing stopping the minority from hiring their own counsel. Yeah, they could all get together and each one of them could kick in $15,000 or so to hire counsel. They could make him an employee. They could bring somebody in as an independent contractor. They don't need anybody's permission for that. They can hire anybody they want for staff. But here's what it says. At the request of the minority leader, the legislature shall hire an attorney. Who's going to pay for that attorney? If the legislature is hiring him, they're going to pay for it. Yeah.
We are going to pay for it.
Well, and they are. So I would suspect that this is a certain matter of bone of contention, because there's only so much money to go around, right? So if the majority has to spend money on hiring a lawyer for the minority, that's less money for them to spend. And of course, the minority looks at it the same way. You know, if every one of us had to pony up 10 or 15 grand to hire our own lawyer, that would be just that much less money that we could spend on hiring people to lay around in our office and read comic books. We're not going to make that sacrifice. So this is pretty interesting, and it's really interesting that Sabina Paris came over and voted to move this to third reading. So, because as a general principle, I can name a couple of exceptions, but if a senator votes to move a bill to third reading, when it comes time for the roll call, the senator will vote for that bill. So there's some Democrat support for what the Republicans want. But there's some Republican support, apparently, for what the Democrats want. That would be Mary Torres. And then the second thing, of course, would be some mumbling amongst the Democrats. We're supposed to take money out of our budget to hire them a lawyer who's just going to make our lives miserable? No way, Jose. So I have some personal feeling with this. I've been both. I've been the minority counsel. I have been legislative counsel. And I can tell you, if you're in the minority, if you don't have a lawyer, you know, you might as well go outside and play baseball, because that's about how successful you're going to be. The next thing, the current rules call for a public hearing in no less or no more than 180 days. They shorten this up to 120 days. Now, as far as I know, this requirement for a public hearing within X number of days encapsulated in the standing rules first happened in the 28th, the Republican 28th. And as I recall, it was either 90 or 120 days. And the reason that was put into the rules is, again, relying on my memory, it was a Mark Forbes idea. And the selling point of the idea was not fairness, not equality, not equity, politics. That it looks a lot better to the folks out there in Mudville if you're not being too partisan when it comes to the people that they like. So I voted for this guy, and you guys never put his bill on the agenda. You think I'm going to vote for any Republicans? So in a legislature where everyone runs at large and party identification is not as strong as it is in some places like the county where I grew up, the primary was the election. Whoever won the Republican primary, you didn't even need to go to the general election, because that was it. It's not that way here. So it's just good politics to come out and make it at least look like you're not going to be that partisan with folks from the other side. Whether the Democrats will see that or not, I don't know. And then there's also this provision that when a bill is introduced, it'd be assigned to a committee within 2 days. So again, without understanding the mechanics of what's involved, a public hearing is a condition precedent to moving a bill on the floor. We have a standing rule that said no bill can come to the floor unless it's had a public hearing. Doesn't necessarily have to have a committee report, but it kind of follows that if you've had your public hearing, the committee report is done, and it has a report, at least a report out only majority, there is a chance that the Rules Committee will put it on the agenda. Without those two things, it's just not going to happen. So bills don't get to the floor without public hearings, with one notable exception that is over now, and that is if Tina Rose Munya Barnes is the speaker. Because there is a safety valve to this public hearing requirement that says that if the speaker certifies that the public health or safety is in danger, the speaker can waive that public hearing requirement. In most legislatures, if that happens once or twice, that's about the norm. For Tina Rose, it was 26 times. 26 times. She even boasted about it one time. Yeah, but of course, you know, you couldn't blame her because one of those times it was her own bill. So this is pretty important stuff here. And then the same thing with the executive director. The legislature, needless to say, is where political patronage rules the day. That people can be hired at the legislature completely outside the merit system. You don't have to take a test. You don't have to do this. You can't be a sex offender. I think that's about it. You could be, if you were convicted of official misconduct, that'd be okay. In fact, that might even be a selling point. Yeah. So political patronage rules the day at the legislature, and I'm not familiar with this one, but I know historically how it works. There is a drawing at the beginning of each legislature, and the members of the majority draw slips of paper that have a job written on them. And if I were to draw the one that said on it, recording secretary office, I could name somebody to go to work in that office. One of my supporters, yeah. And of course, the person who runs this entire thing is the executive director of the legislature. So he really is in charge of all of the patronage. So you could see why the Republicans would want that person to be elected by the body, not by the speaker. Not that the Republicans are going to elect him, but just as we wound up with Therese Terlahi as speaker instead of Tina Rose, there are bargaining chips that can be played.
How much of this would be non-existent, this discussion, if the part-time legislature came in and there was a full-time legislative staff?
Well, if the bill that James Moylan introduced last time around, which is remarkably similar to the one that was introduced in the 28th, almost all of it would go away because the entire permanent staff would be classified employees. They'd be permanent employees. A senator could hire someone outside the merit system, but the budget would be cut in half. So there isn't a whole lot of room, if you really want to get something done for payday employees. During the I think it was the 27th, but I'm not positive. It might have been the 28th. Lou Leon Guerrero had 12 employees in her senatorial office. She had so many employees that she farmed out 2 of them to mayors because she didn't have enough physical space in her office.
She was a senator/temp agency?
Exactly, yeah. So, patronage rules the day at the legislature, and it will until we get this part-time legislature. So, my analysis of the coup that took place when Therese got to be Speaker was that the Republicans let it be known, we'll back Therese. And the Democrats figured, well, we don't want to have a public fight on the floor that involves Democrats on 2 sides of the fight. So we'd be better off asking Tina to take one for the team. So Tina took one for the team. Therese got to be Speaker. How much her wings as Speaker were clipped, we don't know, but we'll find out as time rolls on. But they had to really sweeten the pot for Tina. So she got Vice Speaker. She got Rules Chairman, which is where the real power in the legislature lies, not with the Speaker. And she got to pick her own executive director, who just happened to be the 4th branch of the government. So she brought Carlo Branch back from the executive branch of the government. So, if you just read this and said, oh yeah, they want to change the rules without, understanding what's going on, you might think, well, ho hum.
So what you're saying is it's important to look at history in order to chart your future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Was it...
You're never going to get on the board of editors at the U.S.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, was it Orwell that said the man who controls the past controls the future? Let's see. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the future controls the present, I think it is. So, yeah, what happened before, why things happened is so important if you're going to have any understanding.
Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's take a short break here, and then I'm going to come back to more Rory.
Off a day. This is Rocky Martinez, professional heavyweight MMA fighter. Nothing gets in my way when I go pro at Subway. Pack a punch with double the protein on any foot-long sub for just $2 more. For a limited time only. Subway. Eat fresh.
Okay, Google. Hey, Siri. Hi, Bixby.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
Open the Point app. Opening.
Live stream, on demand, swap stations, check out the visual radio. Get the free app available on the App Store and Google Play, or go to thepoint.gu.
Listen to The Point. Any speaker, anytime. Check us out on your FM radio at 93.3, 104.3 HD3, thepoint.gu, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and tune in. And announcing radio.com. Download the app and hear The Point. Get the latest news, sports, entertainment, and more.
On demand.
Your phone is digital. Your life is digital. And we are too. 93.3, The Point.
Now, we had a poster here who asked the question, is Mary Torres Governor Camacho's wife? And the answer is Mary Torres is Governor Camacho's daughter or Governor Camacho's sister.
Depends on which one.
Depends on which Governor Camacho you're talking about. So the last appointed and first elected governor of Guam was Governor Carlos Camacho. His son was Felix Camacho, his daughter Mary Camacho Torres, who in addition to being the daughter and sister of a governor is also the wife of a Supreme Court justice, Bobby Torres. Yeah. And this is what I call legacy politics. And the way things work in our system here, people who are legacy candidates have a pretty good sized advantage. And I think it's one of the fallacies in our system. I'm waiting to see an Akininguk or a Maguaduk or Taikwinko elected to the, someone who is not a legacy candidate. The fact that somebody's father was governor does not necessarily make them good or bad senators. But it is a real advantage in a community where family is so important, and in a sense your address on the island is described by who your family is. Oh yeah, he is. Yeah, oh yeah, no, he's my cousin. His uncle's brother's nephew's ex-wife's boss was married to my cousin. Really? Yeah, he's my cousin. Yeah. And then, of course, name ID is really important. Name identification. So you don't, if you are a legacy candidate, you start out, probably half a lap ahead because you don't have to tell people who you are because people already know who you are. Makes it really hard to get elected if you come stumbling along with some impossible to pronounce and spell non-Chamorro name like Klitzkie. But it can be done.
Well, you probably had like the least amount of verbiage on your signs because you didn't have a familiar ...
Right, yeah. I didn't need an extra 3 feet of sign to show you all my family names, right? Yeah.
Right.
As a matter of fact, my sign only had 2 words on it. C. Klitzkie, S-I. Klitzkie.
Cool.
C in tomorrow is a proper noun marker. So if you see the word, if you see C and a word after it, that means this is a proper noun. So C Klitzkie, exclamation point. That was my sign. Okay, so let's go on to more Rory. You know that the public auditor really took Rory to the woodshed here about the way they handled the reinstatement of a former employee of the port, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, but I want to go to the PNC news story from last night first. Port requests AG review of public auditor report on back wages. The Port Authority of Guam is seeking a review of the Attorney General on the Office of Public Accountability's report number 2103 relative to the agency's issuance of back wages. I think the first thing I have to say is folks down at PNC need to have a lecture about anthropomorphism. It's impossible for the port to ask for anything. The director of the port can ask for something, and they get to that finally. Port General Manager Rory Respicio noted that the agency had extensive meetings with the OPA and presented a 37-page management response justifying the actions. Our management position remains firm that we act in accordance with law, the Port Authority's personnel rules and regulations, and with the Port Authority board's authority, as well as Civil Service Commission, Superior Court, or Supreme Court orders, whenever such orders are applicable to any of these personnel cases. Respicio wrote in his letter to the Attorney General. Moreover, our management team acted under the advice and guidance by the port's in-house counsel in the development of the settlement templates, not the settlement agreements, but the templates. So when I see that word, which I really would rather pronounce template, but I know that's a mispronunciation. So when I see the word template, this is what my imagination tells me. There is a paper with some blanks to fill in. So in-house counsel gave them a paper with blanks to fill in, and they used it every single time.
Like a Mad Lib?
Yeah. We therefore maintain our disagreement with the OPA's findings. The letter to the Attorney General requests the AG's office to review the audit and to provide legal guidance on whether any post actions are required. Now, here's what's going on. The BJ in the audit report points out at the end of the report that the law says when your agency has been audited, you are to develop a plan to meet the deficiencies identified in the audit. And you're to do that before the beginning of the next fiscal year. And BJ said, we're hoping you're going to give us a timetable so you can accomplish that. Rory now has written to the Attorney General, requests the Attorney General to review the audit and to provide legal guidance on whether any post actions are required. I'm going to read a little bit more here. Respicio said that should the Attorney General not go along with his requests, he will take an appeal to the United Nations. So, like so many other things that come up in the context of the Port 7, this is zany. It's really zany. And I'm going to come back after the big halftime show and describe the zaniness to you in a very zany manner.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Amnesty for illegals, vaccines for everyone. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Some of the points from President Biden in a Tuesday evening town hall meeting on CNN, saying he supports not pressing charges against 11 million people in the U.S. illegally and calling for changes in federal drug laws.
No one should go to jail for a drug offense. No one should go to jail for the use of a drug. They should go to drug rehabilitation.
The president said he expects there will be 600 million doses available of the coronavirus vaccines by late July, enough for anyone who wants it. He also said since taking office, he's spoken with every living former president except one. He wouldn't say which. Deep in the heart of Texas, they're freezing. More than 3 million customers without power. Outages blamed on natural gas shortages and frozen wind turbines.
Our wind and our solar got shut down, and they were collectively more than 10% of our power grid. And that thrust Texas into a situation where it was lacking power in a statewide basis.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott on Fox's Hannity, he's called for an investigation into the failures. But there's more trouble from the skies. Another winter storm bringing snow and cold to North Texas, an ice storm in Central and East Texas that could damage the power lines. Rolling blackouts have also begun in parts of Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. Critics say the Texas power situation shows what can happen when too much reliance is placed on renewable energy sources. North Dakota's Governor Kristi Noem telling Fox News Primetime canceling the Keystone oil pipeline was a mistake.
This pipeline was safer for the environment than how we're moving this oil today. It was safer for people than how we're moving it today by rail and by truck line, and it was going to bring down the cost of gas and oil in this country, which is so important to those hardworking families that try to pay their bills every month.
America is listening to Fox News.
Half a day. This is Alicia Blas from Security Title, reminding you that your 2020 property taxes are now due and payable. You may not know that you can pay your taxes online at pay.guam.gov. All you have to do is follow these simple steps. Register, log in, get a PIN, and pay. If you purchased a property after March 2nd, 2020, you will likely not receive a tax bill in your name, but you will still owe the tax. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
The vaccine is officially here, and we aren't just talking about the COVID vaccine, but a financial vaccine at Bank Pacific. We may not be doctors, but we can help you with your financial health. Whether to take advantage of today's crazy low rates, or just a local bank that has your back. At Bank Pacific, we want to help make 2021 your best year yet. Because for 66 years, where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Former President Trump warning the Republican Party is doomed if it doesn't make some changes in its leadership.
In a statement full of insults and grievances, former President Trump says the GOP can never be respected or strong if Senator Mitch McConnell remains in charge, and pledged to back primary rivals where necessary and appropriate. Trump blasting the minority leader as a dour, sullen, and unsmiling political hack. He also blamed McConnell for losing control of the Senate and says the Kentucky lawmaker would be out of a job were it not for his endorsement. McConnell voted to acquit Trump in his second impeachment trial, then proclaimed on the Senate floor that the former president is practically and morally responsible for the deadly riot at the Capitol. Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
A bill that would ban most abortions in South Carolina, once a fetal heartbeat has been detected, will be debated Wednesday by the state's House. If it passes, Governor Henry McMaster says he will sign it. Similar laws in several other states are now tied up in court challenges. In California, an attempt to limit the influence of the so-called cancel culture.
Republican Senator Melissa Melendez is sponsoring the Diversity of Thought Act, which would ban discrimination in housing and employment based on an individual's political beliefs. In addition to employment and housing, the legislation would also amend the state's education code to outlaw discrimination, harassment, intimidation, and bullying in schools based on political affiliations. Melendez says a free society shouldn't allow thoughts and ideas to be censored. But the website lawandcrime.com says what's in Melendez's bill is already covered under state anti-discrimination statutes. Tom Rigotti, Fox News.
The mayor, the police chief, and 2 city clerks in the small town of Armstrong, Iowa, have been arrested and charged with diverting tens of thousands of dollars in public funds for personal gain. State prosecutors say it's been going on for at least 6 years. and the full extent isn't known yet. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Listen to The Point. Any speaker, anytime. Check us out on your FM radio at 93.3, 104.3 HD3, thepoint.gu, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and tune in. And announcing radio.com. Download the app and hear The Point. Get the latest news, sports, entertainment, and more.
On demand.
Your phone is digital. Your life is digital. And we are too. 93.3, The Point.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Off a day. This is Rocky Martinez, professional heavyweight MMA fighter. Nothing gets in my way when I go pro at Subway. Pack a punch with double the protein on any foot-long sub for just $2 more. For a limited time only. Subway. Eat fresh.
Okay, so here we are, our big halftime show again that we all have come to know and love so much. Back in the second half of Tall Tales, in the second half of this week. Today is Wednesday, after all. And I was talking about the zaniness of Rory's latest approach. Now, you recall that the public auditor issued an audit report that said that Rory overpaid one of the people, one of the Port 7, with whom a settlement agreement was concocted, overpaid him $114,000.
Wow!
Yeah, and the audit report, like audit reports do, lays it out very clearly, step by step, point by point, etc. And of course, Rory took issue with everything, including, according to the auditor, the bona fides of the auditor and their findings. Yeah. So, and he quibbled with almost everything in the audit. But BJ, you know, the public auditor, for every quibble, there was a rebuttal. And as cynical as I am, I was pretty well convinced that the auditor was correct and Rory was wrong. It happens. And of course, this whole Port 7 thing has been an irritant since Rory took over, with his apparently over-eager desire to settle these cases instead of letting them go through the ordinary judicial process. So the public auditor came out with these findings, and then last night on PNC, Rory comes along and says he has written a letter to the Attorney General. And the letter requests the AG's office to review the audit and to provide legal guidance on whether any post-actions are required. Now, the law says that when the public auditor audits and comes up with findings that require remediation, the agency involved is to take remedial action, which is to be completed by the beginning of the next fiscal year. Nothing in the public auditor's charter, organic legislation, etc., nothing in the AG's charter, organic legislation, etc., says that a person, as you were a director dissatisfied with an audit, may take an appeal to the Attorney General. That is just not the law. As a matter of fact, the Attorney General and the public auditor have different functions. The Attorney General is the chief legal officer for the government of Guam, who under the right circumstances could be advising Rory, don't do that. Because if you do, the auditor's going to be getting your knickers on it. But Rory knew better. You recall that one of the first things that Rory wanted to do was get rid of counsel, Mike Phillips, and then hire in-house counsel, Joseph McDonald, who lasted for about 6 weeks. And from then on, Rory was riding bareback down there, no counsel. But he had the wolf. He had Warren Wolf in the person of Luis Baza, who really understood the Civil Service Commission. So to say, for Rory to come out and say, I've written to the Attorney General, I suppose the Attorney General is going to be too polite to do this, but the Attorney General ought to write back to Rory and say, Rory, I am not the public auditor. Why are you writing to me? Even if you were right and he were wrong, it's not my job to advise you to disobey the findings of the public auditor. It just, this whole thing just smacks of either Rory really doesn't know what he's doing or Rory really knows what he's doing. So I said, my prediction was when the audit findings came out, I said, it's really going to be interesting to see what Rory comes out with tomorrow. And this, I was once again exactly right on. So Rory attempts to deflect by saying, the auditor's wrong. The auditor's not doing this in good faith. I'm taking it straight to the AG. He might just as well take it to the Solid Waste Commission and ask the Solid Waste Commission to overrule the public auditor, because it makes as much sense as a, quote, appeal to the Attorney General. So, I don't know, Rory.
They're next on the list, Bob.
Yeah. Yeah. Rory is, for the talk show host, Rory is the gift that keeps on giving. Yeah. So there will be no response. And this Attorney General seems to be more comfort in defilade than anywhere else. So it's more than likely the Attorney General won't even acknowledge receipt of what Rory wrote. Because the Attorney General, remember, is an elected official. He's not under the thumb of the Democrat governor. If we were back to the old appointed system, might be a little bit different. Maybe. And maybe Rory doesn't understand the difference. But, you know, Rory may as well has written to the Solid Waste Commission and said, I don't like the findings. Oh yeah, and then the other thing, that what Rory asks is provide guidance on whether any actions are required. Well, the law tells you what actions are required. You're supposed to come up with a plan to remediate the findings. So if the Attorney General wants to give him any advice, that's exactly what he'll say. Rory, according to the law, you have to come up with a plan to remediate the public auditor's findings. Okay, well, nice going, Rory. You made the list. You made the card again. And then next on my card here is Joanne Brown, who campaigned on an anti-corruption platform. And let's see, I think she got her oar in on this one too. If I could find the story. Yeah. Senator Joanne Brown, who previously served as general manager of the port, has reacted to the report of the Office of public accountability, stating that the port overpaid one of its reinstated workers. Brown said she's glad that the audit report was conducted and that it's important for the public to know there is a lot of controversy in the reinstatement of the so-called Port 7. I think they need to address the process. The board pretty much makes these decisions without the formal information being provided to them, and I hope they take the proper action. For his part, current Port GM Rory Respicio said the management team acted under the advice and guidance of the port's in-house counsel. This is the advantage of having in-house counsel. In-house counsel / blame absorber. In the development of the settlement templates. Thus, they maintain their disagreement with the OPA's findings. So, Rory, of course, Rory's next move would be, of course, to attack Joanne Brown, just to make sure that he's keeping the attention off himself and the audit report. Okay, I had an older one here, Brown versus corruption, where Brown called for a new legislative committee on corruption after discovery of the airport officer's gambling ring. And that makes a lot of sense, too. And Brown said, have that committee review and determine the appropriate course of action so our people know there's a process in place so that if they do have a complaint, they know how to process. That process is going to be vetted and where it's going to go, and certainly have other members of the legislature that will be on this committee, et cetera. Senators, in the meantime, do have their authority to conduct oversight hearings over respective government agencies. But a legislative committee on corruption would ensure people also to have a seat at the table. Quote, we do recognize separation of powers, but at the same time, we certainly have an obligation to review these issues, and obviously this particular circumstance showed very clearly that there's a need to do that. There's a need to do that in our government. So going back history, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I think it was in 1975 after Typhoon Pamela. Pamela was 76, so it must have been 1977. The legislature set up a select committee on police corruption. I think I mentioned that yesterday, maybe not. Select committee on police corruption. They hired a crack attorney, a gentleman named John Moore, may he rest in peace, was counsel for the committee. And they found a lot of really interesting things. They found that police officers, after the typhoon, when things were pretty much shut down, were burglarizing businesses. Yeah. And as I recall, the denouement of the committee's findings was that the director of public safety at the time went to prison. So it's been done before, a select committee on police corruption. There could be a select committee on corruption. Now, legislative committees, I don't think most people quite understand this. I think most people think legislative committees are, the job of legislative committees is go out to catch people doing something wrong and make sure they get punished. Not so. The purpose of a legislative committee is to gather such facts as are necessary to help the legislature enact or amend the law. That's the reason we do it. And you can, even the United States Congress, same thing. And courts have recognized that, and that's why the legislature can issue subpoenas. And if the legislature subpoenas you to come to a public hearing and you don't show up, you can be held in contempt of the legislature, and you can be sent to the pokey for that. So it's a very powerful tool if it's properly used. And I don't think it's been used since that Select Committee on Police Corruption. But it would be an extremely powerful tool, subject to great abuse on the other hand. But it just seems like there's so much going on here that would require a little different approach to the law. So I think Senator Brown is onto something. She did campaign on an anti-corruption platform. which may very well have been bottomed on the whole Port 7 fiasco. And, of course, this whole thing right now, by the way, I probably should go into that a little bit more because the article that ran in the Post did a really thorough article on this. And let's see here. As the OPA noted, the port published the settlement agreements on its website. The published agreements included those from the group known as the Port 7. Jose Guevara, who was apparently employee Q, Leon Guerrero, Francine Rocio, Vivian Leone, Josette Havalosa, Francis Cepeda, and Bernadette Stern Mano, who were involved in a years-long workers' comp controversy, as well as a former accountant and current agate mayor, Kevin Suswiko. The port also published a settlement with Ken Yoshida, an equipment operator who was terminated after 3 suspensions, but Rory entered into a settlement with him. This was pretty interesting because Ken Yoshida's wife came to one of the hearings or one of the board meetings at the port and had nothing but praise for Rory Respicio. Just a coincidence, I'm sure. So as usual, the Post runs a very thorough article on what happened with respect to the Port 7, the settlement agreement, etc. Winding up by saying Senator Talina Nelson, who leads the Port Oversight Committee, has not yet responded to Post inquiries about the port findings and whether she would call an oversight of the port regarding those matters. Well, I'm not surprised. You'll recall that Senator Talina Nelson has asked the Attorney General for an opinion dealing with the programmatic agreement as to whether or not the governor has to sign it. And she made reference to a 1982 Superior Court case as authority for that. And I did a sunshine law request for that, sent it in on a Thursday. On Friday, I got a note from someone I just asked for it. Can you please send it to me? The next day, I got a note back from one of her staff. We acknowledge receipt of your letter. The following Monday, I did a FOIA. And on Friday, I got a letter that said, we don't have that decision. Yeah. So she made this big fuss about this decision.
They don't know what it is, or they just made it up.
And I wrote back and said, show me everything that you got. It shows you just didn't make this up. So either way, it really doesn't speak very well of her. She would go out for the earned media based on a 1982 case that she doesn't have. Just okay. So next item on the card, we'll leave the legislature for a little while. We've got Tom Shea versus the ACLU. And this is a story that ran in today's KUAM. KUAM sometimes will post a story before it runs on their 6 o'clock news, and that's what we have here. Dr. Tom Shea may not be on island, but pro-life advocates rallied in front of his Tamuning clinic this morning to praise the medical professionals' efforts in standing against abortion. From 10 till 11, a handful of people held up signs showing appreciation for Dr. Shea and voicing their opinions on the controversial matter. Shea has expressed his loyal support of life and was most recently seen on social media posts that was highlighted during today's rally. Member of the Catholic Pro-Life Committee, Michelle Armenta. Where have we heard that name before?
She ran for Senate.
And before that, she
was the it's on the top of my head. Lee Weber is now the president.
She was the president of the Vigilance
Committee. There.
Yeah. And she said, we are just out here showing our support for Dr. Shea. If you take a look at our board, you can see how he posted, or sign, how he posted on Facebook saying, if you're considering abortion, there's an option for abortion. And he will take care of the prenatal care and delivery at no charge. And basically is out here to protect the children and the babies who are unwanted, because there are plenty of people on Ireland who do want babies. Additionally, the group noted Dr. Shea's personal services he provides for babies born or unborn, mothers at risk, and his support for laws contrary to life. As we reported, Guam's law on abortion is currently being challenged by the ACLU. So Tom Shea comes out as the good guy in this one. Yeah, I heard him on Ray's show saying, just let it be known that if a mother is in a tough situation, tell her to come to me, because I'll do the whole prenatal and everything like that, and I won't charge. And there are lots of people who are interested in adopting. So good for Tom.
Do you have on your card there what, I don't know if you heard Michelle's interview or appearance on KUAM this morning.
KUAM, what's that?
This other, just a little bird told me. It's
you're asking for a friend.
It mentioned, they referenced her being a part of the Vigilance Committee initially, and they referenced that the Vigilance Committee had sent out a FOIA to Adeloop and a couple other agencies, including the BOA, in any correspondence with the ACLU in context of this. And did you hear the response?
Which was?
We just found it in our spam folder, your request.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It really is. Yeah. Yeah, I saw some of this correspondence because they do copy in the media, kind of like tall tales. And it regardless of what the response is, it does not put my suspicious mind at rest. If Jane Flores would so blatantly go out and hunt for an abortionist, I just can't imagine her, not getting it. Because she said I wrote to Planned Parenthood. I just can't imagine her not writing to the ACLU saying, can you help us, you guys? This is going to be very interesting to see how they do or don't respond to that.
Now, what's the statute of limitations, if that's the word, on responding to a FOIA request? It's not delayed by anything, like it went to the spam folder.
Here's how it works. If I wanted to see that correspondence, I could go to Jane Flores' office right now and say, I want to see all your correspondence. And the statute says you're supposed to arrange all your papers in such a manner that it can't be one of those, I've got to go out in the back shed and look for it. So I should be able to get that right away. Now, I've done an awful lot of these, and in order to kind of minimize the waste of my time, I usually send a note and say, I'm coming in day after tomorrow at 12 o'clock. This is what I want to see. This is what you must show me. And that works pretty well. The statute says that if you want a copy, you send a notice, and they've got 4 days to provide a copy, right? And it says there are some conditions that could be extended for an additional 10 days. Yeah. Hard to find the records, et cetera, like that, right?
You got to consult with the AG.
Yeah, and that is not one of them.
Oh.
No, it's not.
No kidding.
Consulting with counsel is not one of the reasons that you can have that extension, right?
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Also, the dog, I had it, but the dog ate it, does not count either. So this is really going to put the governor and Jane Flores on their proofs.
Huge context here, if there is. Because there wasn't a denial. There is a, we'll get back to you.
Yeah. We'll circle around on.
We'll circle back to you.
Yeah. Okay, so, but I'm following that one very closely. Okay, let's break for the 7th inning stretch here, and then I'm going to come back to Carlotta Leon Guerrero versus Proteji Latexan.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Sunday brunch at Mezcla Bistro in Hagåtña is back, hotter than before.
Come and enjoy Mezcla's true taste of Guam.
At only $28.95, enjoy your Sunday with your friends and family with their free-flowing house mimosa or house draft beer from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Let Mezcla serve up your favorite local foods. Call them at 479-2652
or 479-2653 to book a reservation. Limited seating available.
Mezcla reminds everyone to be safe and stay sanitized. Sunday brunch at Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
All right, 7th-inning stretch here at Wrigley Field in Chicago, and I go from Wrigley Field straight to Retidian Point, sometimes referred to as Letexian. And the next item on the card is Carlotta Leon Guerrero versus Protehe Letexan. Yeah, you got that one right. Acting State Historical Preservation Officer, also known as the SHPO, Carlotta Leon Guerrero says when it comes to the programmatic agreement, Gov Guam took a D+ and turned it into a B in response to criticisms from Senator Talina Nelson, she of the 1982 Superior Court case.
Still searching.
Yeah. And local activist groups that the programmatic agreement process did not allow for enough public input. And I mentioned this before, you know, the comment periods, et cetera, but that gang called Protehe Letexan wanted a public hearing so they could go with their signs and their crude behavior and do a display that would get them some earned media. And that chance was denied them. Nelson had asked the Attorney General for an opinion, here it is, on whether or not the programmatic agreement signed by the governor was valid. And although the senator's office hasn't officially received a response, Nelson is still looking for the 1982 Superior Court decision that her request was based on. What she's saying, what she is responding to the senator, and so the senator should get the response today. The senator was asking what role the AG's office had in the drafting of the PA, the programmatic agreement, and the response is that they've been involved at the outset. This is from Carlotta, who says that the attorney for the SHPO's office is Jessica Toft, who is an assistant attorney general. So before she could respond to Talina's request, she had to consult with Carlotta, her client, and they had a discussion about what the letter says, what she's saying, and what she, meaning Toft, is responding to the senator. Boy, this is a poorly written sentence. So the senator should get a response today from the Attorney General. But you almost have to decode this sentence. The senator was asking what role the AG's office had in the drafting of the programmatic agreement. And it says the responses is... The response is that they've been involved at the outset. So the Attorney General was involved with Carlotta from the very beginning in working on the negotiation for the programmatic agreement. Leon Guerrero said nothing is stopping Nelson or any senator from holding oversight or informational hearings weekly, according to the acting shop. I think what they mean is the acting shippo. Public input led to 6 amendments to the programmatic agreement. The deal that we got with the programmatic agreement is a work in progress, and if something comes up and something changes, new information, that we can go back to it, we can amend it once you're confident that you can go back and amend them, she said. I'm okay to move it along in the process. Boy, this wouldn't pass Miss Kleiner's first grade. Meanwhile, activist group Protege Latexan tells KOAM they will send a letter expressing their concerns about the lack of public input in the programmatic agreement process to ADLU. Oh, that'll show them. Yeah. So, once again, reading between the lines here, Governor Leon Guerrero has been pretty much a cat's paw for the activists, the Protege Latexan gang, the environmental wackos, the separatists, etc. She's been pretty careful not to anger them. But Carlotta, of course, is not seen as a free agent. She's seen as an extension of the governor. And she's taking him on. She said, you guys had plenty of chance to comment. You can hold oversights every week if you want to. We did a good job. We took a D- agreement and turned it into a B agreement, and we can amend it as we go down the road. When what she should have said was something like, yeah, we've got to protect the environment. We've got to protect our, all of the buzzwords, culture, environment, every sentence must contain the word chamorro, etc. Carlotta didn't do that, so I expect this is going to be as interesting as Rory versus BJ as time goes on. Okay, next item on the card here is Chief Ignacio, our chief of police, versus learned helplessness. Last Friday, Senator Jose Terlahi sent a letter to Guam. They can't get this right. Guam Police Department chief. How about the chief of police? He's not the police department chief. He's the chief of police, calling for an investigation into allegations of corruption. But Chief Ignacio said things aren't that simple. Ignacio spoke with News Talk 57's Patty Arroyo, a crack interviewer, that take no prisoners interviewer, right? No softballs allowed. There's a big sign there, no softballs allowed. Ignacio said that there are a number of challenges facing an investigation, and one major challenge is the statute of limitations. Ignacio said a lot of the alleged incidents are said to have happened far enough in the past that the statute of limitations might have run out. We're way past the statute if you're looking at 2018. Up to 2019 is the most. So we don't want to put resources into investigations, criminal or otherwise, in which the statute of limitations has run, because we're not going to be able to bring any charges against any of the persons involved, except the police officers, which you could fire, Chief. Going back to the editorial about methamphetamine, here it is, right here. Now, if you had solid intel that a police officer was involved in the meth trade and that his involvement went back to 2017, you check your statute, say, yeah, the statute is run on that. However, if I investigate this, I may gather enough information that I can find something that occurred within the statute and prosecute that. And even if I don't, I can fire this dirty cop for what he did in 2017. not Chief Ignacio. We don't want to put resources into investigations in which the statute is run because we're not going to be able to bring any charges. Okay, that's the first one. Next, there are also jurisdictional issues. In his letter, Terlahi asked Ignacio to investigate allegations of people tampering with warrants in the court system. You'll remember in both the Mayo trial and the Blas trial, the commissioner of Jonia, there were allegations that Blas could fix a warrant, could have a warrant withdrawn. That sounds pretty serious, right? Ignacio said he doesn't have jurisdiction over the judiciary. Now, this is the chief of police. So what he's saying then is, let's put on our imaginations. Let's say one of the Superior Court judges, right? One of the judge's wives comes into open court and starts scolding the judge in open court for his infidelity, and the court reaches under his desk and pulls out a pistol and shoots his wife. And somebody says, "Call the police." Oh, they can't come because they don't have any jurisdiction at the judiciary. No, Chief. You have jurisdiction over anybody who commits a crime. If you watch Law and Order, you'd know that. Some of the worst corruption occurs in the judicial system. I'm not saying it happened here, but what a stupid thing to say. Ignacio said he doesn't have jurisdiction over the judiciary. He said he'd have to wait until the judiciary completes its own internal investigation and see if the courts decide to bring criminal charges. Courts don't bring criminal charges. The Attorney General brings criminal charges, Chief.
Is that anamorphic? Anamorphic again?
The anthropomorphic.
Anthropomorphic.
Yeah,
there.
courts. The court brings charges, yeah. And then he goes on to say, even if GPD were to conduct a criminal investigation, Ignacio said he'd have to discuss how to move forward with the Attorney General's office. So you can't do that? What, you and Levin Camacho had a skirt tearing contest? So you can't approach them? Another challenge is that many of the allegations came out as testimony during the Mayo trial. The Mayo trial is an ongoing case initiated by the FBI. Well, the Mayo trial's over, Chief. Ignacio said that as is a case with most ongoing cases, the FBI is tightly controlling information. That's why you want to do your own investigation. He said he'd most likely have to wait until the case is over, until he can sit down with the feds and request information he'd need for his own. In other words, until the FBI can do his job for him. It's going to have to be something where I sit down with Senator Terlahi in person so we can lay it out and provide him the best course of action that I think is appropriate for the time. The best course of action for Chief Ignacio is pretty easy. 4 reasons as to why the best course of action. Let me make this clear, given my experience in law enforcement and the fact that I'm the chief of police here, the best course of action is for us to do absolutely nothing. But we got a lot of good excuses. Wow. It's just,
Sounds like Barney Fife.
Really. And read this and then read the editorial, and you wonder why we are where we are. Chief, are you going to investigate that? Well, I just found out about this morning, so I haven't had enough time to make up my excuses as to why I'm not going to investigate. Give me a couple days, and I'll circle back to you. Speaker Therese Terlahi also wants to call an oversight hearing on the matter. So this is our chief of police, Steve Ignacio. Now, I remember Steve Ignacio announcing in the paper that someone, he had an attempted burglary at his house. Someone attempted to steal his truck. So because of that, he asked for several patrol checks on his house. Yeah, he mentioned this in the paper. So I did a sunshine on that. You know, Chief, if you're chief of police, you shouldn't get any better law enforcement than anybody else. And the answer was, so I said, send me all of the public records that show the patrol checks on Ignacio's house during a particular time period. They did a document dump. They said all of the public record for a month, you know. Yeah, so
you go through it.
Yeah, see if you can find it. So you're not going to get any slack from me, Chief Ignacio. And you wouldn't, even if that hadn't happened. This is a sad performance for a chief of police. And I can't help but think back about my good friend that died on Monday. That would not have happened on Scamby's watch, I'll tell you that. Yeah, absolutely not. Okay, so let's see. We're coming up here. It's time to go to Churchill Downs, Jose.
Half a day. This is Alicia Bloss from Security Title, reminding you that your 2020 property taxes are now due and payable. You may not know that you can pay your taxes online at pay.guam.gov. All you have to do is follow these simple steps. Register, log in, get a PIN, and pay. If you purchased a property after March 2nd, 2020, you will likely not receive a tax bill in your name, but you will still owe the tax. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Hey, big news! Now you can listen to The Point on radio.com. And radio.com gives you so much more. Local news stations give you what's going on in your community, yet national news from CBS, CNN, or Fox News Radio. Take a break with one of the hundreds of music, sports, and talk stations. Love podcasts? Radio.com has thousands of true crime, comedy, kids and family podcasts, and more. Listen anytime, anywhere. On your PC, smart speakers, and a variety of connected devices. Or download the Radio.com app now from the App Store or Google Play.
Okay, so here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, home of the Kentucky Derby. It's the home stretch, and we're going to fly from Churchill Downs in Louisville straight to Oregon for the next item on the card, Oregon versus reality, which is in very short supply in Oregon if you've been following the news and what's going on in Portland. The mayor of Portland was all for defunding the police right up until the time that the rioters came to his house. And then maybe it wasn't such a good idea. So the Oregon has a State Department of Education. The Oregon Department of Education says that asking students to show their work in math class is, guess what? A form of white supremacy.
What?
Yeah. So I can remember, when we used to do things, we had a stubby pencil and a tablet. You did your work on a tablet, and kids who actually memorized the multiplication tables, if the problem were 78 times 54, some kids could work it out in their head and just write it out underneath that. Teacher would always say, Bobby, you've got to show your work. Write it out, carry one and all that stuff, right? You've got to show your work. Because teacher wanted to make sure that you knew, that you understood what you were doing. That was just the way it worked. In a math class, in a math problem, you show your work. Not in Oregon. A mathematics guide sent out to Oregon schools tells educators that asking students to show their work in math class is a form of white supremacy. In an email sent out by the Oregon Department of Education, teachers were encouraged to enroll in a course called, quote, a pathway to equitable math instruction. There's that word equity, right? The course came with an 82-page instructional guide that lists ways in which white supremacy is perpetuated in math class. Quote, white supremacy culture infiltrates math classrooms and everyday teacher actions, unquote. The guide reads, quote, coupled with beliefs that underlie these actions, they perpetuate educational harm on Black, Latinx. And what does Latinx mean?
I was told, because my name is Jose Martinez online, because of my viewpoints, I am a Latinx. I am a traitor to the Latinos.
Wow.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know I was a card-carrying member of Latinos, but I'm a traitor.
No, well, the stuff that I've read is that Hispanics don't like to be called Latinx. Hispanic is okay. If you happen to come from that country that's south of the United States, Mexican is okay, right?
Here's another thing. Hispanic is not, quote unquote, a race like the way they like to use white and black.
No.
It's a culture.
Yeah. It's a language. Some of the older tomorrows would refer to someone like me, English, because same with Spanish, anybody who speaks English is English. Anybody who speaks Spanish, regardless of where he's from, he's Spanish, right? Yeah. I mean, in the popular. Not really, but in the popular.
As long as you funnel everything down to racist, you're good.
Well, I think I mentioned before how George Zimmerman, they had to invent a new category for George Zimmerman, whose mother was Mexican or maybe Cuban, and his father, the name like Zimmerman, what else could he be? It was German, right? So when George Zimmerman was involved with Trayvon Martin, obviously it's white versus black. And that's the way it's supposed to be, because that fit into the narrative, and it was just another example of a white man shooting a black man. But then when it turned out that George Zimmerman actually had a Hispanic mother, they had to create a new category called white Hispanic. But they had to make sure that people grooved on the word white in order to make the narrative work. So I notice I got somebody chiming in here in the green room, and I'm not finished here with Oregon versus reality, but I'm going to let R. Keith in. Otherwise, I'm afraid we wouldn't be able to accommodate him before the end of the show. So how are you doing, R. Keith?
Hi, Bob. Hi, Jose. Just very quickly, and you can get back to the topic at hand. Since the topic is white privilege and white supremacy and all that, I didn't know if you had heard about the storm that was striking much of the mainland.
I have.
Yeah, a lot of snow, a lot of ice. It's paralyzed much of the country. I understand that Nancy Pelosi and CNN are calling for another impeachment of Trump for inciting that storm.
And I suspect they've got the votes. Yeah.
And of course, the main reason behind it is because that storm is bringing a lot of snow. And what color is snow?
Needless to say, white supremacy.
There you go.
Yeah.
And there we have it. It all comes full circle.
And on the same subject, R. Keith, when I get back into the card, remember that guy Agarin, who wrote that impassioned plea for renewables?
Yes.
Yeah. Their renewables aren't working out so well for them in Texas. All of the windmills are freezing up. And
they're frozen solid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just, yeah, yeah. Sometimes all you can do is give a dumb look and shake your head because some of these people are almost too stupid to breathe. Really.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, I just thought you'd appreciate that.
I do indeed. Good call, R. Keith. Thank you very much. Yeah, if something bad happens, the default person to accept the blame is Donald Trump. And bad snowstorms, white supremacy. I mean, but there'll be some of these unprincipled Republicans who won't vote to convict in the Senate.
Those traitors.
Yeah, Mitch McConnell will.
Well, kinda.
Yeah. So back to Oregon versus reality. White supremacy culture infiltrates math classrooms and everyday teacher actions. Coupled with beliefs that underlie these actions, they perpetuate educational harm on Black, Latinx, and multilingual students, denying them full access to the world of mathematics. So, let's see, in English, 2 + 2 = 4. In Spanish, dos y dos = 5.
Correct.
Yeah, right? Denancy. Yeah. Okay. The guide offers a year-long framework for deconstructing racism in mathematics. It's called visibilizing. A new word, visibilizing the toxic characteristics of white supremacy culture with respect to math. Examples of classroom actions that allegedly perpetuate white supremacy include asking students to show their work, focusing on getting the right answer. They should not be doing that to kids. Tracking student success and grading students. How do they get cockamamie ideas like this? Getting, to want kids to get the right answer in math class. That is obviously white supremacy. The guide claims that asking students to show their work is a crutch for teachers to understand what students are thinking.
Wait, where did you get this article from?
This came out of the Daily Wire. Ben Shapiro's.
Sounds like the Babylon Bee.
It really does, but it's not the Babylon Bee. This is fact. This is what's really happening. Yeah. This is considered white supremacy because it allegedly reinforces paternalism and worship of the written word. Worship of the written word is an alleged foundation of white supremacy culture, which reinforces documentation and writing skills.
I thought numbers were Arabic.
And this is the Oregon Department of Education, State Department, right? Math classes that focus on helping students get the right answer are also a form of perpetuating white supremacy. The guide claims that calling answers right and wrong perpetuates objectivity, which is considered a tenet of white culture. So you got, if you're being objective about something, that means you're not being subjective. And of course, if you understand critical race theory, you know that subjectivity is everything. Facts mean nothing. It's the narrative, the experience of the oppressed. So
what was that George Orwell quote about past and present and controlling the past? And same thing with information.
Exactly. So objectivity is to be fought if you're an anti-racist, because subjectivity, facts are not important. The narrative is important. Therefore, subjectivity has to trump objectivity. Okay, well, I know this is an example of white supremacy, but it's time for the program to end. If I weren't a white supremacist, we could go for another 10 or 15 minutes.
Well, I want to say exactly 10 seconds, but I don't want to be a white supremacist either.
Okay. See you guys tomorrow.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
New cases of the virus dropping. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. About 60,000 new infections of the coronavirus reported Tuesday. That's the lowest since October. President Biden telling a town hall meeting on CNN last night by midsummer, everyone will have access to the vaccine.
By the end of July, we'll have over 600 million doses, enough to vaccinate every single American.
And that, he says, will be the beginning to the end of the pandemic.
With those vaccinations, the ability to continue to spread the disease is going to diminish considerably because of what they call herd immunity.
But the president said he can't promise that things will be back to normal by Christmas. But he did say a majority of elementary schools will be open 5 days a week by the end of his first 100 days in office. Mr. Biden also calling for amnesty for 11 million illegal immigrants in the country. Millions of people in Texas still without power as a second winter storm brings snow, ice, and freezing rain. Governor Greg Abbott telling Fox's Hannity that Americans need more than green energy.
Fossil fuel is necessary for the state of Texas as well as other states to make sure that we'll be able to heat our homes in the wintertime and cool our homes in the summertime.
Governor Abbott ordering an investigation into the Energy Reliability Council of Texas, calling the group that operates the state's power grid anything but reliable this week. There's been a stunning rebuke of Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell in a statement from former President Trump.
Trump saying the Republican Party can never be respected or strong with leaders like Mitch McConnell at the helm. Mr. Trump went on to say Mitch is a dour, sullen, and unsmiling political hack, and if Republican senators are going to stay with him, they will not win again.